You can roll around in paradise. You can turn around and do it. Wabba-dabba-dee. See right through it. Boom, boom, doom. Boom, boom, boom. It's time to get the show going. It's a live show, folks. What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Derek O'Shea Show. God, that was a weird intro. I hope you guys are having a freaking fantastic day. And it's Wednesday. It's the middle of the week, hump day. You've reached the tipping point where tomorrow is Thursday. And tomorrow begins a downward journey to paradise of what is the weekend. Not necessarily the guy that, sings, but the weekend itself. Let's get into it on the Derek O'Shea Show.
Welcome to the revolution.
What's up, guys? Welcome to the Derek O'Shea Show. Sorry about that insane intro. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Please share this video with all your friends and family. Share it on all social media platforms. It's the only way I grow as a platform. It's through people like you. The algorithm does not care for people like myself, even though Twitter is starting to open up more. Maybe we'll see more places like YouTube and Instagram and stuff like that be more honest about some of their algorithmic practices, as they say. So I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Also, if you want to support my show, you go to buymeacoffee.com/Derek O'Shea Show. It's buymeacoffee.com/Derek O'Shea Show. Let's get into the news, as this is one of the most insane clips I've ever seen. This clip right here, I was watching and I thought, there's no way this is real. It's just like, it's one of those videos that you start to listen to, you start to watch, and you think, come on. You know exactly what you're saying, right? I mean, you're not that in the dark about what's going on in the world. But here we go. MSNBC. Apparently, they don't listen to themselves. That's another important factoid to have. It's important to listen to yourself talk sometimes, because sometimes we say absolute nonsense in life. And even speaking for myself, as I have a show and do this podcast, I speak absolute nonsense sometimes. And I look back and I go, shouldn't have said that. But that never happens with our corporate media, as always. They just double down. It's better to double down than admit that you are fault. But listen to this crazy clip right here. You crazy clip.
You own all of Twitter or Facebook or what have you. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't even have to be transparent. You could secretly ban one party's candidate or all of its candidates, all of its nominees, or you could just secretly turn down the reach of their stuff and turn up the reach of something else, and the rest of us might not even find out about it till after the election. Elon Musk says this is all to help people because he is just a free speech, philosophically clear, open-minded helper. You own all.
It's like one of those clips that you hear and you think, I can't be really hearing what I'm hearing. Is this a fortify the election type of quote? What's going on? I want to hear this one more time, because this is like the definition of our show.
You own all of Twitter or Facebook or what have you. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't even have to be transparent. You could secretly ban one party's candidate.
Exactly. You could just secretly ban one party's candidate. You could just purposely go after one particular party and not really have to explain yourself, and allow other party candidates to be on your platform and, spew hate speech and actually call for murder and stuff like that. That's allowed, but not if you are from a particular party. We're speaking in hypotheticals. This isn't really happening in real life.
Or all of its candidates, all of its nominees, or you could just secretly turn down the reach of their stuff and turn.
Yeah, you could like shadow ban them. I know that's a right-wing talking point. They always talk about this right-wing cancel culture. This isn't real. This isn't happening in real life. It's just a right-wing talking point. Maybe they're just boring. It's insane. I got to keep listening to this clip, because it's just so silly.
Turn up the reach of something else, and the rest of us might not even find out about it till after the election.
Right. So essentially, Elon Musk could fortify an election so that somebody could get in office who shouldn't be in office whatsoever, because maybe they can't even say a sentence, say a well thought out sentence. Is that what we're talking about right now? Let's keep listening.
Elon Musk says this is all to help people because he is just a free speech, philosophically clear.
Yeah, this is all just to help people. You know, and that's at the deep sense of what misinformation is. About what censorship is what I meant to say. Is that it's meant to ultimately help you. It's meant to ultimately help me. It's to safeguard you. It's to put you in this little box and put little safe space tape around it. Put a little tape, maybe a little duct tape to so we can make it bigger if we need to. So you don't want to make it too confined. You don't want to make it too strong of a structure. And we can just allow people to go and run amok. So we'll have our little safe space. But that's what censorship is. I'm like, do you guys hear what you're saying? Are we living in La La Land? Because I'm at the point now sometimes when I'm listening to some of these sites, some of these news broadcasts, and I'm thinking, what reality am I in that's different than yours? What am I reading? What am I watching that is so different than what you are thinking or what you are hearing? Do you even read the news? Do you even engage in culture? Do you even listen to the President of the United States? Or do you just read off whatever your writers tell you to write or whatever you're told to say? Because that's what it seems like at this point, that these people don't even engage with people like you and me. They don't engage in culture. They don't read up on the news. Like if you were to go into a room and talk to one of these broadcasters, don't you think at some point you would think they have no idea what's going on in the world? They literally just read off what they're supposed to read off or say what they're supposed to say. And everything is like a surprise to them. Like, I just don't get this. Please help me explain how this happens besides psychosis. Thank you. Because I don't see how it any other way. And then we get to another psychosis. Because that video wasn't enough, so let's have two different videos. So now we have another video of people freaking out about Elon Musk and his free speech push. God, so sick. I want to be the one that controls the information for the safety of you and me, so that you and me can remain in our safe space. Because that's what it's about. I'm about safety, and so should you. But here is another, and this is the BBC. Last time was MSNBC. This is BBC. Let's listen to this woman.
And I think when we think about free speech, we have to think about whose speech is free, right?
Yeah, whose speech is free? It's these little peons, these people that are spreading misinformation or different thoughts, or as Obama said in his last speech, these people that are asking questions. Should people be allowed to ask questions on platforms? Should they be allowed to ask questions in public squares? Should they be allowed to question the establishment or question those in power? Is it okay for that to happen? And in doing that, are we going to lose our power or maybe our cultural influence a little bit? And that's the bigger problem than actually stopping, people growing in knowledge, because we don't want that. What are you, silly? God, these people are off their rocker, and it's insane where we're at in this today's world. Okay. I saw this video today, and I thought, this is weird. I haven't heard anything about a disinformation governance board. And it's being created by the Biden administration, by Mr. Alejandro Mayorkas himself. Let's listen to this, and then we'll get into some of the facts surrounding it, because I thought, this is like the weirdest thing I've ever heard. This is like Patriot Act 2.0, seems like.
Another huge threat to our homeland is mis and disinformation. You noted that it's a concern of yours at the border, with human smuggling organizations peddling misinformation to exploit vulnerable migrants for profit.
Sorry, this is the loudest that she gets, so turn up your volume. I'll try not to comment over the top of this. Let me just refresh my camera. All right, there we go. Let's go.
Land is mis and disinformation. You noted that it's a concern of yours at the border, with human smuggling organizations peddling misinformation to exploit vulnerable migrants for profit. One of my main concerns about disinformation is that foreign adversaries attempt to destabilize our elections by targeting people of color with disinformation campaigns. After it became clear that there was foreign meddling in our 2016 election, the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence authored a report on the disinformation tactics used by Russia's Internet Research Agency, the IRA, to interfere in the election. The report found that, quote, no single group of Americans was targeted by the IRA information operatives more than African Americans. A newer trend that we saw in the 2020 election and already in the 2022 midterms is that disinformation is being heavily targeted at Spanish-speaking voters, sparking and fueling conspiracy theories. DHS and its components play a big role in addressing mis and disinformation in Spanish and other languages. Can you share what steps you've taken and what future plans you have to address Spanish language mis and disinformation through department-wide approach?
Okay, I'm going to say something. I'm coming back, so you can turn your volume back up. All right. So, first of all, insane quote. This is just like talking about it only affects people of color. When you see racism and everything, you're going to see racism and everything. It's like you stare into the abyss stares back at you. It's just an insane cognitive distortion of altered reality that it's not even necessarily happening, and people could just be having a bad day or whatever, or just coincidence. But it's always attributed to that. But the fact that now it's being talked up of like, but who's those people being directed for misinformation, which is the funniest thing in the world because it's obviously CNN and all these people, but we don't want to have that conversation. So she's asking, what are you going to do to combat disinformation? As opposed to saying, you know what, disinformation, misinformation is just a part of society growing, and how many people are actually speaking up at the same time. It's bound to happen. Instead of saying, how do we make our authoritative voice stronger and provide more clarification and backup and, multiple sources and citations and stuff like that? How do we become stronger as an authoritative source? It's not that. It's let's take down the little people. Let's take down the small people that are pushing these false, whatever you want to say, of what's going on in the world. It's these, as Obama says, it's these people that are asking questions. It's these people that are putting too much raw sewage in the muck, as he said. But let's listen to what Alejandro Mayorkas says about this, because this should be triggering for a lot of people.
Congresswoman, we have a number of different offices engaged in this critical effort. Of course, our Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency has an entire effort focused on election security as part of its mission set. Our Office of Policy, Office of Planning, Policy and Strategy, also is a leading effort. Our Undersecretary for Policy, Rob Silvers, is co-chair with our Principal Deputy General Counsel, Jennifer Daskell, in leading a just recently constituted misinformation, disinformation governance board. So we're bringing, the goal is to bring the resources of the department together to address this threat. I just read a very interesting study that underscores the importance of the point that you make, the spread of mis and disinformation in minority communities specifically, and we are focused on that in the context of our CP.
First of all, I think that, sorry, I'm back. First of all, I think that sentiment and that hypothesis or conclusion is ultimately racist and on its head, is that, it's affecting these people of color, Spanish-speaking, stuff like that, because why? What are you insinuating? That they're not smart enough to figure out what's right to think or what's misinformation and what's information? So ultimately, that's like, that question is based on a reality of racism. And of course, this is what the left is all about, and this is what their Marxist ideology, of everything, of these power structures. And so it's always going to be the case, and it's always going to be through the lens of that. So when you hear that, just know that it's through the lens of racism, and that's why it's happening this way. But I thought when he said we have a governance board of disinformation and misinformation, I thought that was really interesting. And I thought, I haven't heard of a governance board for disinformation, because that sounds very communistic, doesn't it? Like an entire governmental sector who's trying to control the information of what's out there. That sounds like something you would find at North Korea or China or something like that through the CCP. No, that's happening here with this administration because they're concerned, as Obama says, with your questions. We get more into this. Is federal censorship coming? Biden administration creating disinformation governance board. A report. After Biden has declared the winner of 2020 presidential campaign, independent journalist Glenn Greenwald predicted the Democrats would use the force of government to crack down conservative reporting under the guise of combating national security threats. Now the President Biden Department of Homeland Security reportedly working to create a disinformation governance board to counter what they determined to be false information relating to national security. Which, when you hear that, relating to national security, if you're the government, you can literally say that anything is a matter of national security. As we watch that after 9/11 happened over and over again. It's a matter of national security. We just got to do it. On Wednesday, Politico reported that the DHS is creating the board to coordinate countering misinformation related to Homeland Security, focused specifically on irregular migration and Russia. That's right. Border security, if you want to talk about that, got to combat that misinformation. Nina will now reportedly head to the new DHS board. Executive Director Jackowitz was one of the prominent liberals who appeared to believe that the device was Russian disinformation. Of course, anything that questions their reality, questions their ideology is Russian or, white supremacists. It's always something like that. They won't ever have a conversation about the facts or, as they say, the science. They just push it as racist, disinformation, and then it's their way of shutting down your speech. So I find that's interesting, as we're going to find out more information coming out about this disinformation board. But what the heck is this all about, dude? I mean, what country we live in? We have like diversity officers, which is essentially like an arm of this of our own CCP, walking around making sure your quota is good, and maybe you're pushing out right think and doing good trainings that promote diversity and equity. And of course, on its face, when you hear that, you think, oh, that's a good idea, sure. But it's so much more. It's always with everything in politics. The minute you're like, oh, sounds like it. Okay, I could get behind that. Oh, and then you read about it and you're like, why would I ever be for that? Because that's racist on its face. So I'm going to keep a closer eye on this disinformation campaign, as they say. But let's get into more news. Super exciting. With me, Derek O'Shea. All right. Now we get to the top of the hour, even though it's not the top of the hour. And we're talking about border security. I have a whole bunch of clips about border security coming down the pipe, as Mayorkas came out today, which included the last thing I talked about with the Disinformation Governance Board, but he talked about what's going on the border. And the last clip I saved in the series of border clips should make you laugh, because it's just, they don't know. They'll just say whatever. They assume you won't ever look it up. But here we go. Here's, starting off, Ted Cruz himself.
Right now, we've got a crisis at our southern border. It is chaos. It is endangering the safety and security of Americans. We are seeing hundreds of thousands of children being brought in by human traffickers, many of them subject to violent abuse, to sexual abuse. We're seeing criminals, violent criminals. We're seeing gang members. We're seeing people who are known terrorists coming in illegally. This chaos is the result of political decisions made by Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
I forgot to say all the massive amount of legal drugs that are coming down the pipe, but whatever. No big deal. You're not allowed to question it because you're a racist if you do that. And now we have Mr. Higgins coming in talking about America needs to own this as we talk about the border because Mayorkas is doing a terrible job. But here's Representative Clay Higgins as he goes after Mayorkas today.
Experienced failures in your life, sir, significant enough that you as a man over your 6 decades of life, you have a compass can help you measure failure. You know what it is as a man. I certainly do. There's no shame there. I'm asking you. It's an honest question.
Congressman, I'm 62 years old. Anyone who's lived for 62 years has confronted
Has experienced failure.
Different types of challenges, successes, and failures.
Yes, sir. And there's no shame in that. That's part of our journey in life. We get knocked down and we do our best to stand back up. So I'm going to try and help put this in perspective for you, sir. I've had harsh words for you over the last couple of years. You know that.
Oh, I've heard them. Yes, Congressman.
Yes, sir. I hope you feel my spirit right now. I'm also a compassionate man. And I feel that America needs you to own this thing. Good sir. Do you recognize the following statement? You wrote it, or someone for you wrote it. Under the Biden.
That's hilarious. Well, someone for you wrote it.
Harris administration, the Department of Homeland Security has been executing a comprehensive and deliberate strategy to secure our borders and build a safe, orderly, and humane immigration system. Since January 2021, DHS has effectively managed an unprecedented number of non-citizens seeking to enter the United States. Effectively managed. You used that verbiage earlier today. Again, I suppose that's the tested and determined talking point. So I ask you, good sir, tell America, you're a gentleman, 62 years of age, a gentleman of distinguished accomplishment. You're Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security. Like all of us, you've experienced failure in the course of your life. You should have a compass to help you recognize it. This disaster we have at our border, the disintegration of our national sovereignty, cannot be sustained. Anyone that has two brain cells that could perhaps bump into each other would know that it's abject failure down there. So if you would identify our border as effectively managed right now, how would you identify failure? What would it be? 5 million crossings in a year? You had 2.5 million last year. 1 million gotaways. You had 500,000 last year. Crime rate tripled instead of doubled. Number one cause of death from 18 to 45-year-old Americans right now is overdose. Under your watch, what would it be? From 5 years old to 50? How would you identify failure if it's not what you've delivered thus far?
That's a good question.
My God, man. Own the moment. You've been called upon to resign by myself and others. Next year, if we have the majority in this committee, which we shall, you're still in office, you'll face impeachment. I ask you as a man, own this thing. Out of respect for you in the office, I ask you to reflect upon that. And I'll give you my remaining 45 seconds to respond. Please feel my spirit and speak truthfully. Step away from your talking points and speak to the American people and own this thing.
If only any of our politicians would do anything like that, ever. Step away from talking points. God, that'd be so refreshing to live in a culture like that, wouldn't it? Let's see how he responds, though.
We're losing our country down there. We need you to resign. Save the country the pain of your impeachment. I have 20 seconds, sir. Please respond.
Congressman, I couldn't disagree with you more when you state that our nation's sovereignty is disintegrating.
Well, I guess that answers that. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman's time is expired.
Good Lord. Can you imagine? Oh, look at him. Look at that. Just that guy. Jeff Bezos' little cousin. All right, next clip. That's just sad. I hate that the fact that our politicians they just don't care about you so much that they won't even address real issues. It's like Lori Lightfoot. When people talk about Lori Lightfoot and the crime that's going on in Chicago, and she gets asked about that, she just dismisses it. Like, what? What's the problem? Everything's okay. I just reject it. I reject your idea. I'm like, really? Okay. And Jen Psaki gets asked about Title 42 being lifted as a judge blocks it for temporary blockage. But listen to her response, because it's also very telling of our government. It's always like, if the border is crazy right now, and instead of actually addressing it, it's not our problem.
Why should the American people have confidence that you'll be able to deal with that surge of migrants if Title 42 is lifted?
Well, first I would say, just as a reminder, it is a health authority, not an immigration plan or an immigration authority, and it's not meant to be.
Right, it's not our thing, so will you just back up?
Be a replacement of. So the determination about where we stand and to lift it was made by the CDC. Just to note, the 6-point plan that Secretary Mayorkas put out and talked about today or over the last 24 hours includes 6 pillars: surging resources, including personnel, transportation, medical support, enhancing CBP processing efficiency and moving deliberate speed to mitigate potential overcrowding, administering consequences for unlawful entry, bolstering the capacity of non-governmental organizations to receive non-citizens, targeting and disrupting the transnational criminal organization and smugglers, and deterring irregular migration. So what he talked about today is exactly what his preparedness plan that's been in the works and in the planning for months would do, and they have talked about the need potentially for more resources to make that happen.
And just to be very clear, and some Democrats have said this, will the plan be in place before Title 42 is lifted?
That is exactly what the preparedness and implementation plan is intended to do.
Sure. I trust that the government will be on top of everything. It's going to take months. And now we go back to Mayorkas talking about how effective he's been, saying that, you know what, we haven't lost control of the border. What are you even saying? We will not lose operational control. Here's Mayorkas again, another clip. It's important to hear from the horse's mouth, you know?
It is our responsibility to maintain operational control of the border. That is what our personnel are dedicated to doing. That is what the personnel throughout the department and I, as a secretary, are dedicated to doing, and we will not lose operational control of the border. It is our responsibility.
We will not lose operational control. If you are saying you're in control of the border, what does not in control look like? Because, dear God, if you have over 1 million people crossing, how does that? I don't understand. Okay. Of course, they rely on low information voters. They rely on people not actually looking up this stuff. They rely on people from New York, people from other places around America that aren't directly affected by this. They rely on that. And they rely on some of these big businesses praying and hoping for low wage workers to come through, because they can't keep paying people down the street from my house, I saw McDonald's hiring for $22 an hour. That's nuts. They can't keep doing that. They can't, because you and I won't be able to have our burgers. Okay. And now we go back to Mayorkas being asked about the border wall. And I find this answer, border wall, hilarious.
The wall projects, the majority of them rest in the jurisdiction of the Army Corps of Engineer. Those that we ourselves control, I believe that the cost of discontinuing them is approximately $72 million, and I will follow up with you to ensure the accuracy of my statement this morning.
Yeah, to stop the border wall, we're actually paying $72 million. All right? And it's Putin's border wall price hike is what's actually happening. Everyone knows that. That's actually a fact. It's the Putin border wall price hike. Putin made us stop developing the wall and pay out of pocket $72 million to stop. I trust them. They're looking out for our best. All right, and we got another question coming down from Mayorkas about what's going on the border. And he says, it's an increase of migratory flows is not something unique to the United States. Okay, so back up, bro.
It is very important, I think, that everyone understands that an increase in migratory flows is not something unique to the United States.
Right, so why are you so worried about it? God, it's such a right-wing talking point.
This is something that countries throughout the region, throughout the Western Hemisphere, and as we have seen so powerfully and regrettably throughout the world. We have seen more than 5 million Ukrainians flee their country that has been so brutally attacked by Russia. We have Colombia in the southern part of our hemisphere experiencing more than 1.8 million Venezuelans within its borders. I recently traveled to Costa Rica, to Panama, and heard from other countries.
It's such a dumb argument. It's like, oh, it's happening in these other countries, so we should just put up with it. You're basically showing that you just don't like these people. It's such a dumb argument, but they'll make whatever argument in order to stay in power, in order to make their base feel like they're doing a great job. And then here we go again with Mayorkas talking about how, because nothing negative in America is Biden's fault or the administration's fault or, Mayorkas' fault. It's essentially Trump's fault.
We inherited a broken and dismantled system that is already under strain.
You also inherited someone trying to build a border wall, and we're paying $72 million to stop building that border wall. So, yeah, freaking Trump, he's the reason why the migrants have gone up dramatically since Biden has been in office. It's Trump's fault.
Not built to manage the current levels and types of migratory flows. Only Congress can fix this. Yet, we have effectively managed an unprecedented number of non-citizens seeking to enter the United States and interdicted more drugs and disrupted more smuggling operations than ever before. A significant increase in migrant encounters will strain our system even further, and we will address this challenge successfully.
Yeah, how successfully? Because you haven't been very successful, have you?
It will take time. And we need the partnership of Congress.
It will take time.
State and local officials, NGOs, and communities to do so. To build on our ongoing work in this budget, we have requested funding to hire 300 new Border Patrol agents, the first increase since 2011, ensure the safe and humane treatment of migrants, and operationalize a new rule on asylum processing. We are requesting additional funds to counter human and drug smuggling operations, combat the heinous crime of child exploitation and human trafficking, and stop goods produced by forced labor from entering our markets.
At least he has some genuine arguments of what's going on in there. But again, they're going to pretend like they're doing a great job, as he then comes out and says this, as this is the icing on the cake for the segment I like to call Border Crisis segment. Bum bum. And here's Mayorkas saying, actually, we're doing a good job. It's effectively managed.
We inherited a broken and dismantled system that is already under strain. It is not built to manage the current levels and types of migratory flows. Only Congress can fix this. Yet, we have effectively managed an unprecedented number.
We've effectively managed the thing. So shut your mouth and quit complaining about what's going on in the border, okay? It's effectively managed. If you say otherwise, it's because you're Putin in disguise. I just can't with these people. I gotta laugh a little bit. And what better way to laugh than watch my favorite television show of all time? My favorite, My Little Pony. My favorite show. Here's The View. I'm sorry. We're going to get more into news, but we got to have a laugh segment. Female politician candidates face gender bias. I'd like to hear some of their thoughts. If it's too much, I'll stop it.
So the good news is that there are more female elected officials in America than ever before.
And they're Republican.
But gender bias is still alive and well in politics. Research from the Barbara Lee Family Foundation found that women have to jump through a lot more hoops than male candidates to show voters that they're likable and qualified.
Yeah, unlike Joe, she's totally likable. She didn't have to jump through any hoops.
Men.
I'm going to save this for later. It's too silly. And I'm not in a silly mood yet. You know what I mean? All right. So then we get down to this statement from our dearest, humblest presidents ever. You know, Joe Biden came out and said this, and I just think it's ironic. Again, here's another way of showing the mirror of what's going on in the world.
I got involved in politics because I think the greatest sin that anyone can commit is the abuse of power. Whatever that power is, the power of a teacher, the power of a doctor, the power of a leader. When someone who is relying on you or you cannot, just the abuse of power.
Exactly. I hate when people abuse power, like get into office and then they like help their family members become multimillionaires and maybe also become multimillionaires in the process. And I hate people that abuse power and like push for agendas and things that, you know, just makes them more money. I totally agree with Biden on this one. Spot on. Great job, big guy. Hashtag Hunter. Oh, what an ironic statement coming down from this dude right here. Just so silly. And then we have this story come out today that Trevor Reed, a Marine that was in prison, falsely imprisoned supposedly in Moscow, is released as we did a swap. And he looks like he hasn't eaten in a long time. Look at it. I mean, just look. It's a completely signed video for those who are listening via podcast, but he's going into a Kremlin-owned private jet for the swap, but he can't even walk on his own, as two other soldiers from Russia have to carry him to the plane. I think we swapped with a drug smuggler, which is just great. And now we have good news. Robert Pattinson's going to be the next Batman again.
Good news from cinemas.
A new Batman.
Yesterday's CinemaCon event. Warner Brothers also confirming Robert Pattinson and director Matt Reeves will be back for a Batman sequel. No release date or any further details have been announced. But things are looking good for the Gotham duo. In March, the latest chapter of the Caped Crusader opened with the second biggest box office weekend since the pandemic started.
That's because Roku went to see it 4 times.
18 times. And in the classic superhero movie fashion, audiences were left on a cliffhanger, a tease for the Joker's character at the end of the film. You remember that. As they say, to be
It lived up to the hype. It did.
You loved it. You
Yeah.
see the smile?
But Colin Farrell as the Penguin was a revelation.
Oh, really?
Unbelievable.
Wow. Well, more to come on that one.
I agree. Colin Farrell was great. I thought the Joker thing was lame. I didn't like the Joker character because I just feel like no one can ever top Heath Ledger, and they're all going to try to be Heath Ledger. And another new exciting movie coming down the pipe is Yay! God. And then we have another new exciting segment of Harvard getting in trouble. But let's listen to this as they announce a $100 million fund because a new study finds ties to slavery.
America's oldest university is confronting one of its darkest legacies. Harvard just completed a deep dive into its past, and it discovered some painful truths and announced plans to address them. The report is called Harvard and the Legacy of Slavery. It looks at the school's deep connections to wealth generated from slave labor. This report shows that Harvard's faculty and staff enslaved more than 70 people during the 17th and 18th centuries while slavery was legal in Massachusetts. Harvard says it will now spend $100 million to address its ties to slavery. Based on the report's findings, those ties run very, very deep. The university says it was directly invested in sugar and rum industries in the Caribbean, as well as cotton and railroads in the U.S. In the first half of the 1800s, slavery...
That's right, repent, and thou shalt be saved.
And then we have aspirin is no longer recommended to prevent... Aspirin is no longer recommended to prevent heart attacks.
Now we have a GMA Health alert. Many people take a daily baby aspirin to prevent a first heart attack or stroke. Now, a top physicians group is rewriting the conventional wisdom, advising against taking it for many, including those over 60. You know, our chief medical correspondent, Jen Ashton's going to weigh in on this because it's coming as a surprise to many, but you say this is long time coming.
It's been being debated, Robin, for pretty much 20 years in the world of cardiology, but now the U.S. Preventive Service Task Force making it official, changing their recommendations, but not for everybody. This is for a certain group of people 60 years of age and older who would be taking this to prevent their first heart attack or stroke. Why? They found the risks in that age group outweigh any of the benefits. And as you've heard me say for about a decade, it's always about risk versus benefit. So very, very important, people.
Except for a certain child.
Under the age of 60, if they are at higher risk, meaning a greater than 10% risk over the next 10 years of having a heart attack or stroke, they should continue. So this is not for everyone, but it does affect almost 29 million people.
Okay, so.
Oh, you heard it here first. If you're over 60, lay off the aspirin. What did I tell you about that aspirin? All right. Now we get into some of the fun. As Biden comes out. Okay. This clip from Biden. This freaking clip from Biden talking about children and teachers is exactly why you're seeing more and more parents stand up for the rights of their children when in regards to how their children should be taught. But here's Biden, of course, taking the teachers' union side over the parents. Here we go. Listen to Biden's words very carefully.
Public in the world. Have our students gain confidence enough to know what they can do, to reach in. We have an obligation. We have an obligation to help them teach and reach their potential. You've heard me say it many times about our children, but it's true. They're all our children. And the reason you're the teachers of the year is because you recognize that. They're not somebody else's children. They're like yours when they're in the classroom. You represent a profession.
That's right. They're not somebody else's children. When they're in your classroom, those children are your children. And you must take care of them as if you are a parent. Even though you're not a parent. And you might not ever be a parent. But you need to pretend like somebody else's children or your children. And so when people push back and say, hey, that sounds an awful lot like you're trying to groom my child. Well, it just makes logical sense, doesn't it, Biden? God, I mean, what reality are we in? You know, it's okay. It's okay to, you know, teach my child whatever you want. And if I push back and say anything, that's me attacking you as a profession. No, it's me holding you accountable for things that you do at your job, like any job in the world. You can't just go around in any job doing whatever the frick you want to do. It's just not part of reality in life, is it? I don't care where you work. You work at Chick-fil-A, you work at Home Depot, you can be a lawyer. You can't just go around doing stuff because I see fit. It's good. I'm making a difference. Oh, but he just continues to push down on that. All right. You're starting to hear a little bit more rumblings coming from this Biden administration in regards to what's going on with student debt around the country. And I've always said my biggest problem with student debt is they chose to do it. So in some essence, you should reap what you sow. But of course, in the generation of it's not my fault, it's somebody else's fault, they'll never have to be forced to pay, probably. Biden is talking about wiping $1.4 trillion of student debt out the window. Making me mad that I actually paid for my schooling in a payment plan like a total sucker. But here's Jen Psaki being asked about what's going on in regards to student debt. And as always, my question has always been, why aren't we holding these schools and institutions accountable for how much they freaking charge kids for school? School should not cost that much. But it happens because more kids are willing to pay because they're not even thinking about how much they're paying. So they're just, you know, swiping right, essentially, with their credit. So here's Jen Psaki talking about it.
Then, you know, if the president does move on canceling some of the student debt, isn't that just one half of the equation, though? I mean, what is he looking at in order to keep some of these public universities from jacking up tuition prices, you know, despite some of the federal subsidies that they've been getting? I mean, what is to stop some of these schools from just increasing tuition for the next generation of students? Isn't that half of the equation here?
I don't know if people would consider it half of the equation. I don't know. We'll let Americans define it. I would point you to the Department of Education to talk about their efforts on that.
Exactly. As soon as you question the teachers, just like the parents questioning the teachers of what the teachers teach their children, if you question these pillars of institutional thought in regards to education and whatever have you, that's the real problem. You're not allowed to question these people. You just have to shut up and take it. Nobody's thinking about how much school costs. Why would they think that, you silly goose? We just need to get those kids to go to college for free. And everyone should pay for it. It doesn't matter what they go to school for, or even if they need to go to school for whatever they're going to do in their life. You should pay for it, and your grandparents should pay for it, and your grandkids ultimately will have to pay for it. Don't you just love this administration? They're doing so many good things. Speaking of good things, as we get down to this, here we go. Jen Psaki being asked again about Hunter Biden. And this statement is borderline misinformation and hilarious. Listen to this very carefully.
We've heard the president say over and over again that he has never spoken to his son about his business dealings. Has he ever spoken to his son's business partners about his son's business dealings?
Again, nothing has changed about what I said yesterday. The president does not get involved in the business dealings of his son.
Even through his...
So the president doesn't get involved with the business dealings of his son? Never? Not once? Okay, big guy.
Son's business partners.
Nothing has changed since what I said yesterday.
I don't believe you answered that part of my question yesterday.
He's not involved in his son's business dealings.
Oh, very spicy. Will she be held accountable? if it comes out that we find out who the big guy is. God. But you heard it here first. Also, just so you know, COVID isn't over, according to them. COVID isn't over. COVID to this Biden administration is like an ex that won't go away and doesn't know how to break up with one another. As Jen Psaki came out and said this.
So there's no question that we're in a moment, a different moment in our fight against COVID. But we also know COVID isn't over and the pandemic isn't over. So
it's not over, COVID. It was never over. I still love you and I'll keep you forever in my heart. And I will do whatever it takes to pursue you and keep you in my life forever. I love you, COVID. Don't go away. You are my friend. And without you, COVID, I am nothing. I have no power, and I have no purpose in life. I must survive and do whatever it takes to be who I am. I don't know where that accent came from. I apologize. And then we get down to a fun story. Look at this fun story. A pet duck helps police close 2-year-long missing persons investigation. This freaking family duck helped police locate a body of a woman who's been missing for more than 2 years. Duck, 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 duck. What rhymes with duck? Murder solver is what rhymes with duck, and everyone knows that. And then we get down to this clip. Never forget this. As I call this part of the show, Daddy Elon Hour, as we remember an old clip from Daddy Elon talking about Trump on Twitter.
Twitter is a war zone. If somebody's going to jump in the war zone, it's like, okay, you're in the arena. Let's go.
Okay. Who does that sound like?
I don't know. Who's it sound like?
It sounds like a guy who lives at the White House.
Oh, that guy. Yeah, sure. He's very good at Twitter.
I know.
I think the president is amazingly good at Twitter.
So triggering for everyone. Who does that sound like? She just talks like she's like a child. All right. And now we get to the part of the show. We get to the part of the show where we have green energy crisis time. And first we'll start out with our green energy segment. Biden's energy secretary not knowing how to freaking charge an electric vehicle. That's right. Tell me again how I need to drive an electric vehicle.
How does this work? Look, amazing.
How does this work? I don't know, but you need to get an electric car. You get it right now. It's freaking so crazy. Okay. Of course. These people, they've never bought groceries. They don't, they don't have somebody buy their own gas. They just get driven everywhere by a chauffeur. These people don't know what your life's like as they're in their private jets and tell you how to live. And then we get down to, again, this administration isn't doing everything they can in order to lower gas prices for people like you and me. They aren't, and they don't care. Here's Jen Psaki talking about it right now as Biden's doing everything he can to lower the gas prices.
That the U.S. was going to release 1 million barrels a day for 6 months. Crude oil prices are still over $100 a barrel today. Gas prices are up. Is it having the intended effect?
Well, we've said this is one tool that we can utilize, and I know that gas prices also did come down from the beginning as a result of these actions, but we're continuing to explore additional options.
Yeah, I know it was meant for wartime effort, but we're gonna do it right now. And also, we don't care. We don't care if all the barrels go down. And then we have this part of the segment. As Biden's State Department says the quiet part out loud, as I like to say. Biden's, what's this guy? State Department, what's his name? I forget his name. State Department spokesman guy. He looks like Anthony Blinken's brother.
We are working with our European allies and partners, as well as others, to transition away from Russian sources of energy and ultimately to transition away from fossil fuels entirely.
Exactly. So we don't care how much you pay at the pump, so shut up and pay it.
To continue this transition to renewable, to sources of energy that will see to it that neither the United States nor any country around the world is held hostage to a country like Russia, who can close the spigot whenever they so choose.
They don't care. As I consistently say, they don't care. They don't care if you pay $30, $40 at the pump. They see it as a win for green energy, period. Speaking of green energy, we have Mr. Private Jet himself, John Kerry.
One thing that seems worrying is that as energy prices soar, a lot of fossil fuel executives are smelling a business opportunity. I mean, their stock prices have been rising. They want to drill more, not less. What do we do about that?
Well, first of all, they wanted to drill more before the war hit. That's pretty obvious.
That's true.
And the answer is yes. They have obviously, many of them, not all of them, decided that this is an opportunity. Now we have the latest warnings even of the IPCC telling us unequivocally that we're really at the crunch time. I mean, this is crunch. So people are going to have to get a lot more serious than they have been about accelerating this transition.
That's right. We're accelerating the transition. Also, they want to drill more. I thought we were told that they could drill as much as they wanted. It's their problem. God, I'm just, you know when you feel you're starting to go crazy, and you just might be. I don't. This is a weird news day, people. And then we have SpaceX doing the... Actually, let's go to this part. All right. This leaked audio coming from McCarthy has got everyone on the left losing their minds. They're just like, feel like it's like the easiest win they've ever had in their life. And they feel like they can do whatever and say whatever. And it's just an amazing time. But here's The View talking about the leaked audio. Because I think, let's just hear how insane what they say about McCarthy and Trump. And like, they're going to talk about how like they're going to get in fights. And oh my God, Trump is causing so much division.
And the crime rate is going up in America. And a lot of it seems to be due to Republican on Republican crime. The New York...
Oh, not those teenage black kids in Chicago. Who cares about those people, right? Right, Joy? God. Imagine being such an elitist POS that you say that stuff. Who cares about all those gunshot victims? Losers. God.
New York Times released more audio of House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy talking to Steve Scalise. Isn't that how you say his name? He's Italian. Scalise. About how they really felt in the days after the January 6th insurrection and which fellow Republicans they worried could stoke even more violence. Watch this.
Tension is too high. The country is too crazy. I do not want to look back and think we caused something or we missed something and someone got hurt. I don't want to play politics with any of that. I'm calling Gates. I'm explaining to him this is serious to cut this out. Potentially illegal, what he's doing. Well, he's putting people in jeopardy.
They sound like co-hosts of The View.
Again, I don't know how any of that can be said that he actually is in charge of the whole thing, but this is where we're at.
Of course, the lovely Matt Gaetz is not happy with those two right now, saying that, quote, this is the behavior of weak men, not leaders. It's interesting. McCarthy finally does the right thing, and of course they turn on him for that. Do you think that this will have any impact on Republican voters, just seeing what a hypocrite and a liar McCarthy is, and not just him, a few of them?
That makes Gaetz and I in agreement for one time in my life. He said these are the actions of weak men, and these are. Because when you know better, you do better. But that was
afterwards.
Yes, he backtracked after.
Right.
That was his real response. And then when it compromised or potentially affected him politically, he was able to sleep at night changing course. And he did nothing. So Matt Gaetz is right. These are the actions of weak men. They did nothing. And you expect more. There are people that are like...
They're so pumped up about this. Again, it's going to be an absolute nothing burger per usual, but you know, it's important to get absolutely jacked up and excited about everything that's going on in the world that has a negative impact to Republicans or GOP or especially Donald Trump in their eyes. Not much news today besides all that stuff, and I appreciate you guys for joining me. It means so much to me that you take time out of your day to hang out with me. I'm going to end today's show a little early with a commercial, and hopefully something more exciting happens on Friday. Look out for my next live show this Friday. Come hang out with me. It's probably going to be a long one. We're going to have fun that day. I might be watching a lot of stuff that Friday. So I hope you guys have a great day. I love you, and thanks for stopping by and hanging out with moi. It means so much to me that you do so. It really does. I hope you have a great day, and I'm going to end with this commercial break. And enjoy your life. Enjoy your day. Goodbye, people. Love you. Bye.
My fellow Americans, it's me, Joe Byron. Make sure to support Derek O'Shea by going to buymeacoffee.com/Derek O'Shea. Easily one of my least favorite YouTubers of all time. And all you have to do is go down here, buy him a coffee, support a show, or even join as a member. $3 a month, that's all it costs. And you could be a big-time supporter of his show. He's a good guy, but he's a piece of crap, and I hate him for that. I hope you have a great day, and as always, let's go get ice cream, and I need to get my sniff on.
Comes out and says this is the icing on the cake for the segment I like